favorite films of the year. This one is extraordinary. And there's so much to dive into. That obviously, you read it as a little girl, Greta. You have reread it. The story's been in your head and wanting to film it. Let's talk about how getting it to the screen and the amazing sort of moments that was like.
Sure. Yeah, I've been wanting to make this into a film for a long time now. But I mean, I read it as a kid. I loved it. It was my favorite book. Jo March was my favorite character, and she was really the character that made me want to be a writer. But I hadn't read it since I was like 15, and then I read it when I was 30, and I kind of couldn't believe it. It felt so modern to me. It felt like I'd never read it before. There was something about it where I felt like there were all these things that I had missed. And it was, at the heart of it, it was always the story that I loved, which was about, you know, these sisters and this family and this love that sustains them. But there's also just really deep things about art and commerce and ambition and money and authorship and ownership and women. And I thought that's exactly, those are all the things I'm interested in. So I wanted to make it into a movie. So I hadn't yet made Lady Bird, but I sort of begged to get into the room at Sony and to talk to them, and I told them I wanted to write it and I wanted to direct it, and they were like, "Who are you?" I was like, "I'm Greta Gerwig." And they were like, "Are you funny?" Or I don't really understand. But luckily they hired me. They said, "You can go ahead and write the script," and then I wrote the script. Then I went away and I directed Lady Bird, and then they said, "Would you like to direct this?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm thrilled." So that's been about 6 years. So in the active portion. So yeah, when I was finally on set, it was really exciting.
You were just showing me some pictures on your phone of the kind of track, kind of blocking out scenes, and they kind of mirror exactly what's on the screen. And you said, people sort of think that you had it in your head, and you kind of did, obviously. I'm wondering, though, if certain things change. Obviously, the tightrope walk that you do at the end is such an extraordinary bit of filmmaking, because it is turning the story that we know and the story that's in the book into sort of this beautiful sort of meta quality, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazingly fun, because it was getting to make a movie within a movie, and I was getting to make this kind of, like, all of the cinematic signifiers of a big romance. Like, it's the chase in the rain and the rain machines and the backlights, and when we were writing the music, I was having Alexandre write all these, like, timpani and cymbal crashes, and I got to do it because I'm not really totally doing it. And so it was, in a way, it was kind of the thing that allowed me to go for it, was the fact that I knew I was in this other negotiation. But I think, honestly, maybe just me and Amy Pascal and my actors knew what I was doing with the ending. I think I kept trying to present it to the studio like, no, I'm not tricking anyone. And they were like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, definitely. And then finally they said, they were like, you lied. But sometimes it's better to, whatever they say, beg forgiveness than ask for permission.
I love it because it turns out that obviously the love story between Jo and her art, and Jo and her book and her writing, and that's how it should be.
That's right. Yeah, and to go back to the what I was showing you on my phone, just it's funny now because obviously now it's a movie, but I have all these videos on my phone of a year and a half, 2 years ago in Massachusetts, like, blocking out the scene between Jo and Lori on the hillside. I have my first AD and our assistant Alessia walking that path, and me saying, like, well, if you put like a dolly track in the middle, you could track with them this way, and it's sort of I still kind of can't believe it, that it went from like me thinking about it just, with a couple people into what it became. And it's amazing how much of it is exactly the same as the original idea.
The scene of the hillside is so beautiful and it's so phenomenal. By the way, let's have a round of applause for this extraordinary cast that is. There's a moment you and I were just talking about, which is that early on you guys were sort of riffing on something, there was a rehearsal thing, and she sat a certain way, right?
Yeah, there was, we were doing the hair and makeup tests and the camera tests, and oh my god, you guys saw it on film. You're one of the few audiences to see it on film, and it makes me so happy because we shot it on film, and I love the jitter. I love it. It makes me so happy. I find it very emotional. I find film itself very emotional. I think the sort of objectness of film, shooting on film, obviously you get closer to the look that I was going for. As they say, it falls off the truck. You can kind of just get close to it. But also there's something that I find emotional about watching film prints and also shooting on film. But in any case, yeah, we were doing camera tests, hair makeup tests, but everyone was in their full regalia. And Saoirse and I had rehearsed, we talked, but there's some weird magic that you're always counting on to show up when you're making a movie. And she's a complete genius, and I don't really know how she does what she does, even though I feel very close to her. And she's such a filmmaking partner for me. But anyway, we were doing this she was wearing the I call it the Amelia Earhart wig as Jo, it was actually based on Amelia Earhart, because she was the most stylish, fabulous woman. And I was looking at all these photographs of Amelia Earhart, and I was like, that's Jo, it's Jo. And she's got her little rakish tie around her neck, and she's kind of squinting. She's just so fabulous looking. Anyway, she was wearing the wig, and we were doing sort of a slow push in on the camera, and she just crossed her legs sort of like this, and then just cocked her head up, and then just looked straight at the camera, and I was like, oh my god, it's Jo, and then we finished the push-in, and then I ran up to her, and I was like, Saoirse, and she was like, don't say it, I know. And I was like, ah! But yeah, it was just that moment. We were like, oh, Jo came to play. But you just don't know.
You're don't break the magic.
Yeah, I know. I feel like all you do as a director is break magic. Actors are doing something wonderful, and you're like, guys! And they're like, Mom. I feel like they're Mom all the time on set. I'm always crying, and they're like, stop crying in front of everyone. But I'm very proud of them.
But you create magic in this film. You do not break it. We're going to take some questions from everybody in just a moment. We also have to talk about Florence Pugh and how, in some ways, you sort of rescue Amy from the sort of bad reputation that character sort of had, a wrong reputation, maybe.
I know. Don't you find it ironic that the character we've hated for 150 years is the character who says what she wants? I found that funny. I was like, we really don't like that girl. Because she's just like, I want a dress. And we say, that girl sucks. No, I love Amy. I feel like Amy is a very profound character. And that was something that really jumped out at me while I was reading it again. And some of her most wonderful lines were just there in the book, and I'd never noticed. Like the line, I want to be great or nothing. And that's, when she says that in the art studio. And then I have her deliver a joke about the Bronte sisters, which I'm not sure who that was for. But I remember when I was like, he's like, what women are included in the Genius Club? And she's like, the Brontes. And I remember on the set, someone was like, you're gonna cut that. And I was like, no, people will think it's hilarious. Who am I imagining? But it is weird, they actually did think the Brontes, of all women, they were sort of I don't know, women. But the Brontes were like, I'll give you that. So anyways, I kept it, and I always liked that she sort of had a ready answer there. But yeah, I love Amy, and I think, I mean, Florence Pugh's also just an astonishingly great actor, and I knew I wanted her very badly. And she was actually shooting Midsummer right up until we started shooting. I was like, get out of that flower costume and come do this. But she kept sending me selfies in the middle of the field, like trapped in a flower cocoon. And it was a very funny transition for her.
In terms of the Bronte thing, it's sort of like, of course they would let them in. They're the ones who invented the man woman in the attic. So it's like,
that's right. Yeah, no, that's another theme. The Bronte's the mad woman in the attic, which is also, I mean, women in attics in literary terms, they're always like, who's that? No one, it's my wife. Like, sorry about it. And then like later in Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, Lily Briscoe at the end puts her, like, essentially, I think it's a cubist painting in the attic, and she's like, never mind. And I feel like there's lots of literary examples of it, and also just this idea of, like, I'm not gonna bring this out to the world. And what I wanted to do with the Joe story and the romance of, like, I wanted to make a romance of it's not a boy and a girl, it's a girl in her book, and that you take it out of the attic. And you know, it's art in the age of mechanical reproduction. What's in here becomes a machine, but then it kind of disseminates.
Timothée Chalamet, one of the beautiful things about his performance in this film, in addition to him being so beautiful, is he sort of brings this boyishness to him. He sort of brings this sort of sense of glory of, like, he is sort of in some ways like this sort of impish sort of thing, and the girls are obviously the ones who have to be out in the world and have to use their wits and be able to use their art to create what they want to create.
Yeah, no, I mean, he does, I love him as Laurie. I love him in general. I think he's just, he's a wonderful boy. But he had this real understanding of the yearning Laurie has to be essentially a March sister. That's like all he's ever really wanted. And the reason I knew Timothy was the right person for the role was actually, like, during all the awards craziness. He has a sister who's actually a wonderful actress, Pauline, and he would bring her to all these events, and I would see them together, and then she'd bring her friends, and I'd see him with his sister and all their friends being, like, doing little dance parties, and I was like, oh, Timmy's a sister. Like, he wants to be a sister. That's why he's such a perfect fit.
So one of our previous Q&As, that shooting him also was like shooting like a young Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. I know that was said by Amy. Actually, we were watching dailies, and she was like, "Nonsense, Elizabeth Taylor." It's true. It's so beautiful.
If anybody has any questions, put up a hand, and we will get a conversation going. Yes, great. I'll repeat that.
individual stories for each of these characters as to their relationship with finishing a work of art and finishing their thought, which is obviously very hard for women in that time period.
Yeah.
I'll repeat that just so you guys heard. In terms of each sister's kind of individual relationship to art and finishing art, which is difficult in that time period.
No, that's a really beautiful way to put it. No one's ever expressed it quite like that, in that sense of completing a thought. Well, I mean, for Virginia Woolf, same. I love Virginia Woolf. For a long time, actually, the opening quote of this movie was Virginia Woolf. Intellectual freedom depends upon material things, which is from her essay A Room of One's Own. And I was like, that's exactly it. Like, you need money to think in a way, and she kind of teases out this distinction about women and writers. So in any case, she's sort of underneath a lot of it. I mean, I'm always interested I always saw the March sisters as like four geniuses, four lady geniuses, and I saw them as like, well, what the fuck do you do with four lady geniuses in the 19th century? Nothing. You don't do anything with them. They can't do anything. And and the more I read about Louisa May Alcott's family, her mother, Abby May, who's fascinating woman, and she was so bright, and her brother went to Harvard because her brother went to Harvard, and he would bring back all of the reading that he was, and she would try to keep up with it, but she didn't have anyone to talk to or anyone to help her. So then when she had her four daughters, she was like, I'm gonna give them everything I possibly can that I didn't have. Not, in some ways, thank God, not even thinking about like, and what are they gonna do with it? So I wanted to give each of them like a real seriousness of their art and of their ambition, that I mean, like with Beth, she's not playing hymns in the corner, she's playing Schubert and Bach, and she's just as big as any of them. She's not marked for death. And, I think of the sisters, obviously Jo's the one who goes the farthest, but I wanted each of them to just have that scope of really caring about what they're saying. But I'm always interested in this sense of, through an individual effort, you can transform the possibilities of the world around you.
Even Amy's, taking on the nickname at the ball is sort of a reflection of obviously her wanting to be an actress.
And Meg,
Meg.
Meg.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that kills me, which there's so many weird little things in this movie that, like, I don't know if anyone will ever notice, but I know they're there. But it was in the book. The name that they all call Meg at Vanity Fair, they all call her Daisy. And then when she has a daughter, she names her Daisy. I almost dropped the book. I was like, was that the last time she felt free? I don't know, maybe. What a beautiful, sad thing. But anyway, it was just lots of little things like that.
Next question. There was a couple other hands, I want to make sure. Yes, sir.
Like you, I read the book when I was maybe 12. But unlike you, I haven't read it since. So I don't remember it very well. And in this marvelous film, I am trying to wonder, because I don't have a good memory, how much of this is you, how much of this is Louisa May Alcott. I am wondering if she ever came up with a line like, if I'm going to sell my heroine into marriage, I need to be paid.
Right.
What brilliant line. Is that you or Louisa May Alcott? And there are a lot of other lines like that too.
Well, thank you. I also, well done, sir, for reading this book. Welcome. Nice over here. That line is my line. That line is my line. But the concept of her, she didn't want Jo to get married. And she did make a decision for Jo March to get married because she, her publisher and the fans, she thought it was the right economic decision. So the basis of that discussion is in her work. I mean, I haven't done like a percentage breakdown, but a huge amount of the movie is actually from either the book or her writing or like other writings she did, like other books she published or letters or articles. And so much of what I wanted to do was keep the language sacred and then have them speak it so fast and so reverently. It just sounds like, it's the speed of life. It's the speed of youth. And so I would say a lot of the dialogue is hers, but that one is mine.
If ever at least about one more. Yes, great.
Hi. I thought you did an absolutely incredible job of modernizing this story for a modern audience while still staying true, obviously, to the original text. And I was just curious, like, what your inspiration was for making it a non-linear script and making it a non-linear story.
Question about what was the inspiration for the non-linear script and the parallel timelines?
Well, that came really early with the writing. I would say there are a few reasons. I would say the first reason was when I realized that as soon as all the sisters are in their own lives, you know, Amy's in Europe, Joe's in New York, Beth is at home but she's sick, and Meg is married with kids, that they're never all together again. It gave it this this real ache at the center of it, and I was like, okay, but then if you started there, then the thing that they missed is already gone. They've already had their last day and they don't know it, and I felt that there was something that was deeply emotional in that, and it also allowed me to do what I was interested in, which was kind of locate the author all the way through, locate the author of Jo March writing what her childhood had been, but also locating Louisa May Alcott writing Jo March, writing what the childhood had been, and then me writing Louisa, writing Jo. Like it was the only way that I could think of that allowed me to surround it almost in a cubist way, where I'm looking at it from multiple angles at once. We were actually talking about, this is another detail that now you'll know, and that, you know, there's they go to the play at the beginning, or Jo goes to the play in New York, and the play she goes to see is Twelfth Night, and Twelfth Night is, you know, one of the cross-dressing comedies. It's a girl dressing as a boy wooing a woman for someone else, but then the woman's falling in love with her. It's a mess. But the lines that they're saying to each other that you hear are, the woman said, you know, she says, "Tell me what thou thinkest of me," and she says, you know, that you do think you are not what you are, and she says, "Then think you right. I am not what I am." And I've always thought that moment in Shakespeare, I am not what I am, and by structuring the movie this way, I felt like I was playing with, like, where's the self and where is the author, and starting from the back and then going to childhood allowed me to sort of like create that kaleidoscope of identity, essentially. And then there's another more just emotional reason for it, which was that the book was originally published in two parts. The first half is Christmas to Christmas, 1861 to 1862, which is basically what you think of when you think of Little Women. It's like gathered around by the fire. And then it skips several years, and then they're all in their separate lives, and they're getting married, and they're doing other stuff. And I always thought that the sort of magic of girlhood is this, you know, Beth gets sick, and then she gets better. And then the reality of adulthood is that Beth gets sick and she dies. And once I started layering the two on top of each other, that was a big key emotionally for me, because I felt like if I could create cinematically the thing that I've said when people have died, and I've heard other people say this, and you almost say it in a knee-jerk way, you say, "But I just saw them," as if presence could inoculate you from death. And I thought, I always saw it in my mind's eye of that double walk down of Beth, of like one time she's there, and it's Christmas and Father came home, and then she's not. But it had just been the other way. And I think that kind of putting the two time periods together, that was sort of the emotional core of it.
Wrap up, Yuval. I've also heard you say that one of the things about it is, and that really works so beautifully, is that, you know, the usual protagonist story is kind of a journey from home, and this is a journey back to home, to finding the reasons you are the way you are.
Yeah, no, it's also so many movies or books that have really for women, especially for young women, all the adventures tend to happen in girlhood, and then as soon as you become an adult, everyone's like, pack it up. Terrible. So I felt like by starting in adulthood, it's a way to kind of re-find that bigness and that ambition and that freedom that was available to you in girlhood that then, the world doesn't necessarily have space for, but how to kind of find that again.
Let's also wrap up by talking about your amazing collaborators, including Jeff and Duran, your costume designer, and York, your DP, and how finding them and kind of creating that team around you really brought this film to life.
Yeah, I mean, I was Jacqueline Duran, who did my costumes, was probably the first person I was gonna work with, and she was, oh my God, she's an absolute genius, and she, I mean, for me, she was the person who, when we were doing all this research that really gave me permission to make these girls we knew. I mean, there's a wonderful photographer, Julia Margaret Cameron, who just if you go look her up, Julia Margaret Cameron, Google her images, they look like they're all these portraits of girls, and they were taken in 1865, and they look like they could have been taken yesterday. You can't believe how modern these girls look. And they don't look anything like you think of as a period piece. So she was instrumental in helping me free up my conception for these women. And then Yorick Lasso, who was my DP, he's French, he's wonderful. We were also looking at paintings and having discussions because I was looking at all these Thomas Cole paintings from the 1840s of Massachusetts, and I'd say, Yorick, can we shoot this? And he's like, that's not a real thing. There's no camera that works like that. Say, but can't you figure it out? But he did. He made it work. And then Jess Belcher is my production designer who's he works with the Coen brothers all the time, and he's just relentlessly excellent. And they all kind of understood this delicate balance of I wanted it to feel slightly heightened, especially in childhood, but I didn't want it to feel fake. I wanted it to feel emotionally true, because how you remember the way something felt is just as true as what it actually was. And I wanted that feeling in every piece, and I wanted York to be like a dancer with the camera, and I wanted everything to kind of just be suspended like that. And they were just the most. I mean, one of the best things about working on a big movie is just working with these world-class artists.
So relentlessly excellent. That's a great phrase for this movie in so many ways. If I could ask everyone just to stay in their seats for just a couple of moments. Greta has another Q&A to get to. But ladies and gentlemen, writer-director Greta Gerwig, the film report, Little Women. Thank you.